Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is July 8th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, terrible news today, and unfortunately, I have to start with this because this is just a heinous terrorist act by Russia yet again, one of thousands of Russian war crimes in Ukraine since 2022. And today, the Russians decided to deliberately target a children's hospital in Kyiv, one of the most modern one in Ukraine, but also in Europe, the Okhmadit Children's Hospital. But this wasn't the only target. They also targeted Dnipro, Kryvyi Rih, and many other locations, killing and injuring dozens of innocent civilians in the process. And imagine if this was your child being treated for cancer, or your wife giving birth in a maternity ward, and then seeing this happen. It's just heartbreaking and such a heinous act by Russia. And unfortunately, Russia will continue to do that because Putin's goal is clear, is to destroy Ukraine. No matter how many times he claims that he wants to sue for peace and Ukraine just has to give up a certain oblast or several oblasts and then withdraw from NATO, and then everything's going to be nice and dandy between Ukraine and Russia. Don't be fooled. His plan is to destroy Ukraine. And he wrote an essay talking about how he doesn't believe Ukraine should exist, that Ukraine doesn't deserve to be independent and sovereign. And so his ambitions are clear. And today is another representation of what Putin has in mind when he talks about peace. It's killing millions of Ukrainian people, assimilating them and turning them into orcs like Russia. And the right response to such a heinous attack, of course, would be tomorrow's NATO summit and NATO confirming that Ukraine can now utilize any weapons and they have unlimited range. They're going to be giving unlimited range to strike any military targets within Russia. That includes oil refineries, military bases, military airfields, command centers, storage points, and ammunition depots, right? This is a true response following such a heinous, just terrible attack, right? Is NATO and the United States going to go ahead with this? I doubt it, because I've seen that the past 2.5 years, this isn't the first and only, terrorist attack that Russia has done in Ukraine. And after each and every terrorist attack, we've seen that the policy hasn't changed, right? From especially the Biden administration, that is the de-escalation policy, meaning that we don't want to anger Russia too much. We want to make sure that Russia, isn't defeated quickly. And with that in mind, Ukraine is limited on the types of weapons it can use, the range that they can use them at. And unfortunately, I don't believe that even following such a terrible terrorist attack today, that there will be shift in policy. But I can only hope that this will eventually change. So unfortunately, I had to share these terrible news with you guys. I have no words, and my heart goes out for all the families that lost a loved one today in Ukraine. It's absolutely horrendous, but that goes on a daily basis. This isn't the first time, it won't be the last, and it will continue to happen. And it will only stop when Russia is truly defeated, the regime is dealt with, and the Russian people go through a reform and transformation internally, because this is also a Russian society problem, because they support this terrorist attack. If they hadn't been supporting it, we wouldn't have this war right now. And unfortunately, 2.5 years later, we still have a war. We still have hundreds of thousands of Russians signing up to kill Ukrainians. Just some food for thought for you guys. So, heading into more positive news now, I shared with you guys on YouTube community yesterday a successful Ukrainian strike on a Russian ammunition depot in Voronezh. And you can see the aftermath on the satellite image. You can see that pretty much the entire ammunition depot has been pulverized, basically confirming that this was a very important ammunition depot. Based on the image, it was a massive cloud of smoke, massive explosions, and you can see that essentially this ammunition depot was not too far away from Kyiv and Luhansk. Essentially, this will complicate Russian logistics in their offensives in the Kupiansk direction and also the Kharkiv direction. But again, as of treading along with my statement in the previous slide, Ukraine needs to be allowed to strike deeper and deeper, not only with their own drones, which I believe was the weapon used here to strike this ammunition depot, but also being able to use whether it be ATACMS or other long-range missiles to strike deeper and deeper within Russia. The intensity and scale is what really matters here. This is one of the most important factors which will decide whether Ukraine comes out a victor or not. And right now, Ukraine is being limited by this intensity and scale because NATO is too afraid to escalate. And you remember, guys, back in spring and summer of 2022, when Ukraine was hammering Russian ammunition depots because they were building them and positioning them very close to the front line. And every other day, there was a massive explosion in Luhansk, in Donetsk, and other occupied territories. And the Russians eventually lost a lot of territory in Kharkiv because they were so weakened by fall of 2022 that they essentially lost several battles in Kherson, in Kharkiv, and Kyiv as well. And so this is also very crucial for Ukraine to continue raising this intensity. But Russia's adapted as well. You can see that they moved their ammunition depots deeper and deeper in areas where they know they have the safe haven. And I've talked about in my previous one of my videos last week that Russia knows that there's a safe haven because NATO doesn't permit Ukraine to strike deeper than, let's say, 100 or 150 kilometers between the border of Ukraine and Russia. And so they build these ammunition depots, these military airfields, or they position some of their valuable assets in these areas deeper because they know that Ukraine won't be permitted to hit them. And so this limitation needs to be completely removed. Is that going to be done? I think eventually will be, but it will be too late, right? Maybe next year, but by next year, Russia will find a way to adapt. And last but not least, I need to talk about a very important update as well with regards to how much more can Russia continue this war. Because, of course, these are approximations, it's an estimate, it's never a certainty for sure. It can definitely fluctuate and change dynamically, but based on the analysis made by HIMARS, so credit goes to him, and also Cover Cabal for the analysis, based on the recent satellite images taken from Russian storage bases deep within Russia, you can see that Russia has about 1 to 1.5 years left of offensive capabilities when we look at the tanks that they have available. And essentially what Russia is currently doing is that they're refurbishing pretty much at 100% all of their tanks that are in storage. And you can see that they've analyzed the condition type of these tanks, varying from the T-55 all the way up to the T-80UD variant. So different eras of tanks. And you can see that the ones that are considered in decent condition based on satellite images, Russia has 700 of. So these are the ones that Russia can pull out of storage, quickly refurbish in a matter of a few weeks, and bring them to the front line. So they have 700 of them left. And based on the average loss that Russia has of 100 tanks per month, this doesn't give them that much, right? About a year to a year and a half. Because, of course, Russia has more tanks, but they're in poor or terrible condition, basically meaning that half of them at the very best can be converted and refurbished, right? Because then Russia has to cannibalize some of them. They have to pull out some wheels, maybe the turret, some other components. So they have to cannibalize the tanks that are in terrible condition. And Putin knows that, right? That's why he's so desperate and counting on Trump's election in November of 2024. And he's really, really counting on Trump's election because we've seen how pro-Russian Trump has come out. Essentially, he's planning to force Ukraine to capitulate, and Putin knows that. That's his last hope. And we can all allow this to happen, right? And Russia, of course, is also able to refurbish its tank fleet because of China and also the West. The West is also selling key components and microchips and other assets that Russia needs to build these tanks, to build these missiles, to build these APCs. And right now, Russia is only able to refurbish. They're not able to produce new tanks from the ground up because their industry is kaput, right? They don't have the capabilities. Just look at the T-14 Armada program, which was scrapped because, well, there was, one, too much corruption, but also Russia just didn't have the industry to do it, right? Obviously, it's tied to the corruption because Shoigu was removed for a reason because he was stealing left and right. 30% of the budget was going straight into the Shoigu GDP, the personal Shoigu GDP, and his minions. And so, pretty much Russia has no ability to have a modern military anymore. So right now what they're doing is just refurbishing these old T-55s, T-62s, T-72s, and trying to continue pushing with their meat wave attacks, because that's the only thing that works for the Russians, is just throwing meat. But you can see that there is a limit to that, and Russia has about 1.5 years max tops left of offensive capabilities. So I can only hope that the Biden administration is voted in November. Unfortunately, I believe that they will continue with this de-escalation policy. Unfortunately, Ukraine will have to play by that game, but at the very least, it will ensure that Ukraine will receive a steady supply of weaponry, enough to defend itself, and then Russia will be so weakened within a year and a half that Ukraine will have the weapons and tools to obliterate the Russian military through a counteroffensive operation in the south. And I've talked about in the past with you guys, this is the one that makes the most sense, hitting Russia again in the south through Zaporizhia and cutting off this land bridge and essentially destroying the Kerch bridge, cutting off the Russian supplies in the south. And this will slowly deteriorate Russia's military and perhaps eventually losing Crimea, which will be a huge no-no for the Russians. And then a massive internal insurrection will occur, protests, because the Russians, of course, won't be happy that they lost, one of their most valuable assets, that is Crimea in the south of Ukraine. So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my update. I will make most likely a live stream tomorrow. I'll set up the hour, probably in the evening, but it's been a long time since I made a live stream with you guys. So I'm really excited to meet you, have discussions, because it's been over 6 months, I think, since I've done my last live stream. And, just a normal Q&A discussing, the future, the current situation. So that's that. So join me tomorrow for the live stream. A huge thank you for support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Slava Ukraini!